Okay, welcome. I'd like to call the October 27th meeting of the Dorado Irrigation District Board of Directors to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Even though it looks like everybody's here.
The meeting was called to order at 9:02 a.m. We have directors Penn, Mansfield, Dwyer, Anzini, and Day present, General Manager Bandiar, General Counsel Polson, and Board Clerk Sullivan present.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in the pledge. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved?
Thank you very much.
Second.
You can't move. Oh, thank you, Alan. Good. Any board comments on the agenda? Any public comment on the agenda?
If members of the public would like to address the board on the adoption of today's agenda, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2. President Dwyer does not appear there. Any members of the public wishing to speak on the adoption of today's agenda, moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Day. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out to those that are in the room and online, is in addition to the agenda and the information on our website, there's also a spot called Packet, and that has all of the information that the board receives. And so it's, in interest of transparency, there's 400 and some pages of information about this meeting that are included in the packet. And Jennifer and staff worked really hard in putting together that packet to give the public as much information as possible. So I'd encourage anybody that has a special interest to review that packet and then give them more information for comments. Okay? So moving on to,
Sorry, it's me, once again, can't get this right.
you are?
George Jr.
Yeah, George Jr. right?
We loved him.
It must be that spot.
My apologies.
Okay. Pavani, do we have any employee recognition today?
We do have employee recognition today. Today, the district received an email from Kimberly, an EID customer, expressing appreciation for the outstanding service provided by Victor Weiss, property management and maintenance technician in the drinking water division. Kimberly commended Victor for handling everything with respect and excellent communication, which made the entire process easier to deal with. The customer also expressed appreciation for his skills and kindness. Excellent customer service is one of our guiding principles, and Victor's professionalism reflects this commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, that's the kind of representation we strive for and our face to the public. So thank you. Okay, moving on. For public comment for any items that are not on the agenda.
If members of the board, members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Moving on to communications, General Manager,
Nothing today.
thank you. And Jennifer, do you have anything for us?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Let's make it 3 for 3. Board members, do you have any report on activities or?
Yes.
Oh, dang.
I'd just like to compliment our staff right now with their social media presence. I really appreciate seeing the postings about what our employees are doing, our projects. This is a really good, transparent way for people to understand when they see EID trucks at certain projects and honoring those who are working hard for us. It's well-written, and I look forward to more of it. Thank you.
Yes, Director Day.
Yes, it's what you all look forward to every fall. It's time for the annual Acorn Report. And kind of mixed report. First of all, get a little background for the people that are new here, is I noticed back one of the early droughts, 3-year drought, very few native California oak trees. They have to be native California oak trees that have grown naturally from acorns. They were not dropping any acorns during the drought. It kind of makes sense. They're conserving. However, the fall, and we didn't know it at the time, that we were going to get a hugely wet winter, but the trees knew it. And they were dropping thousands, millions of ripe, big, beautiful acorns. And I was like, that's weird. We're in the middle of a drought. Why are the oak trees doing that? And then we had a huge wet winter. And fast forward a few more years, we had another drought, and the same thing happened. No acorns, no acorns, no acorns, and then a ton, and we had then a huge wet winter. So I have a theory, and that think about it, the California native oak trees have been here for millennia, and they understand the California feast and famine cycle of water and rain and drought and snow and all that sort of stuff. So, so far it's been fairly accurate. I'm kind of spitballing a little bit of it, but this year is a mixed bag. Down in El Dorado Hills, doesn't look good. They're immature acorns, very few acorns, and based on that, I would predict that we're going to have a below average winter. However, I've gotten some anecdotal reports of big acorn crops from native oak trees up here. And so I think the oak trees may be as confused as us. So I think depending upon, because I've also read some of the weather reports too, long-range weather reports, that depending upon what happens, we could end up with a wet year, but it could easily shift to a dry year. So I'm going to call a below average year. However, best case scenario, maybe we'll get an average year. So we'll see how that pans out based off the oak tree report. And I appreciate your listening to me.
This is the Holiday Almanac. We got Ben Franklin.
But don't you usually bring show and tell?
Well, we've had, in the past, we've had buckets of acorns as evidence, but there are no buckets, at least not down my area this year. So now, Brian has reported that he's getting a lot, so we'll expect the bucket maybe next week.
A lot of acorns from the native black oaks right now.
Yes, so, so we're uncertain.
That's probably as good a prediction as NOAA or
Whatever their acronym is.
yeah. Thanks. Always look forward to it, Alan. All right. Any other comments from board members? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Prior to a motion or a second there, I'd request that we pull item number 2 for separate consideration.
Okay.
So moved.
Second,
Approve the consent calendar minus item.
yeah. And maybe we should just set that separately going forward, or?
I think that because it's going to vary it's better just to leave it on the consent calendar for now, instead of having to reach out to staff each time.
Okay,
And, you know, we can move through it pretty quick.
okay.
Are there any public comments on the consent calendar minus the warrant registry?
If members of the public would like to address the board on the adoption of today's consent calendar, please refer to the instructions on page 2. President Dwyer does not appear there. Any members of the public wishing to address the board on the adoption of today's consent calendar, moved by Director Penn and seconded by Director Day. I believe we're ready for the vote. Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Moving on to consent item number 2, which is the warrant register, which is a list of all of the payments that we've made to everybody since the last board meeting.
I'll move item 2.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
And
And I'd just like to make an announcement that I'll be recusing from this item. As an employee of Goldbud Farms, I receive income for providing farming services to Matt Veerkamp Vineyards. Matt Veerkamp shares ownership in Doug Veerkamp General Engineering, and just to avoid any perception of a conflict of interest, I'll recuse myself.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Any public comment on consent calendar item number 2, the warrant register?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions in today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear. Any members of the public are wishing to speak on consent calendar item number 2, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Anzini, with Director Mansfield recusing himself. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Thank you. Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries.
Now, do I open the public hearing now?
Yes.
Okay. At 9:45, we'll open the public hearing on the draft environmental report for Flume 48. Thanks.
It's actually 9:15.
Oh, did I say 8?
You said 9:05.
Oh, thanks.
I thought he said 9:45. We're all home.
Who knows? Who knows what I,
Time, space, continuum.
yeah.
We'll get it together here. It's a Monday.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Started here. Yeah. Morning, Board. My name is Mike Barron, Environmental Review Analyst here at the district. Okay. Today I'll be presenting Flume 48, Utility and Infrastructure Replacement Project, final environmental impact report for your consideration. Some previous board actions were in 2022. The board adopted a resolution supporting the submission of a grant application to Cal OES under FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. The district was subsequently awarded the grant in 2024. And also in January 2025, the board awarded contracts for survey, design, and environmental review for the project. Just a summary of issues. The main reason we're here today is because this project is subject to review under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And CEQA requires that the board consider the potential environmental effects of the project prior to approving it. Today, I'll discuss the background and provide an overview of the project. I'll explain the environmental review process. I'll ask for your consideration and certification of the EIR for the project and request your approval of the project with consistent with CEQA, sorry. And just to emphasize, this is just approval of the project under CEQA. There should be a future board item to award a construction contract of the project. Moving right along, just for some context, the district operates the El Dorado Hydroelectric Project, also known as Project 184, under a license from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. And from the picture here, you can see the four high elevation storage reservoirs shown at the top of the photo. We have the diversion dam on the South Fork of the American River near Kybers, which diverts water into the El Dorado Canal, which conveys about a third of the district's total water supply. The canal also consists of various conveyance structures, such as flumes, tunnels, and siphons that convey the water approximately 22 miles from Kybers through Pollock Pines back to the river. And then Flume 48 is a component of the El Dorado Canal. Here we have a location map for the project. You can see the canal highlighted in orange with Flume 48 project area highlighted in red. It's located just after the canal crosses underneath Highway 50, just west of Fresh Pond, before the district's Camp 5 facility or Bullion Bend to the east. Let's start with a photo here of what Flume 48 looks like. Here you can see it's a wooden flume with wooden support structures. It's located on very steep terrain in the South Fork American River Canyon in a densely forested area. And all these characteristics make it particularly vulnerable to damage or destruction from wildfire and other natural hazards like rock and tree fall. Another characteristic of Flume 48 is that it's supported by a historic rock wall. This hand-stacked rock wall was constructed in the 1870s during the original canal construction. It actually still functions today, which is proof of how effective the unique construction methods were. There are examples of similar rock walls located along the canal. This is one of 8 segments that make up a historic rock wall district. As a group, they're considered historic resources eligible for being listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The project requires removal of the wall, and we'll be replacing it with a modern mechanically stabilized earthen wall, which is necessary to meet factors of safety required by current engineering standards. And essentially, the removal of the rock wall is what required the preparation of an EIR for this type of project.
I don't know, it may add, obviously it would add cost, and it may be prohibitive, but because of the historical context, not only of the rock walls, but also of wooden flumes, which eventually we're not going to have any because they are problematic, but they're quite fascinating and they've served us very, very well since the gold mining days. And if there's some way to rebuild a portion of that, just even if it's just a bench or something, of using those rocks here in front of the building, or have a cross section of the wooden flume, just to preserve that for future generations, I think that would be awesome if we can find a way to do that.
I do have some information on that in later slides that I can present
Great.
at that time. But if we can move right along, I'll definitely get to talking about some preservation activities for the rock wall. But for now, our project objectives, as the board is aware, we all know the risks associated with wildfires and wooden flumes. During the Caldor fire, the district lost multiple flume structures. Here's a photo of Flume 30, which was of similar construction to Flume 48 and was completely destroyed. So the objectives of this project are to construct a project that protect our facilities from wildfire, ensure reliable water supply, improve safety, and maintain operational reliability of the canal. Here we have a graphic of the proposed project, essentially. The photo on the left shows the current Flume 48 wooden structure, which we'll be replacing with a wildfire-resistant concrete canal, similar to the photo on the right.
While you had that photo up there, oops, back up one, please. I just think it's important to point out that in addition to having the fire-resistant, more robust flume, concrete flume, we also have better access, as you can see on the right-hand side of the right-hand picture. Matter of fact, there's even a little gator back there. So patrolling the flumes and maintaining them is improved, and the safety of our employees is much improved.
Agreed. One of the side benefits is additional access for these projects for maintenance. Now on to the environmental review process. As I mentioned before, the project is subject to review under CEQA, and the purpose of CEQA is to identify potential significant environmental effects, find ways to prevent, avoid, or lessen potentially significant effects, and encourage public and agency participation. Preparation of an EIR is a multi-step process that provides a number of opportunities for public and agency participation, beginning with a notice of preparation, where in this case we issued in December of 2024, followed by a draft EIR, which contains the complete environmental analysis for the project that we issued in August of 2025. And today we're here for the last step to present the final EIR. As we do for all our projects, we conducted extensive public outreach, and here's a list of where we sent our notifications for the project. On this slide, we show the general objectives of an EIR, which is to describe the existing environmental conditions and environmental effects, consider the alternatives, and present ways to reduce significant effects. Specifically for Flume 48, we prepared a draft EIR that provided in-depth analysis of potential environmental effects, bases conclusions on resource-specific studies like cultural and biological surveys, evaluated alternatives to proposed project to see if there's an alternative that would substantially lessen any potentially significant effect, and we incorporated mitigation measures. So on this slide, these are the resource categories for Flume 48 that required mitigation. In this case, these are all pretty standard mitigation measures associated with a construction project of this type. These mitigation measures are included in the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, or MMRP, section of the final EIR. Continuing on with mitigation measures, while the resource categories in the previous slide could be mitigated, there aren't any standard mitigation measures for removing the rock wall. Therefore, the demolition of the rock wall is considered significant and unavoidable under CEQA. So staff, in consultation with the State Historic Preservation Officer, or SHPO we call it, developed a mitigation measure to document the rock wall by taking measurements, photos, in order to preserve the character-defining features of the wall. But in this case, we'll also be featuring a boulder from the rock wall with signage as an interpretive display here at headquarters.
Nice.
But even with this mitigation measure, CEQA still considers the impact and adverse effect to the historic resource as significant and unavoidable, which means it can't be fully mitigated by removing it, and why we also need a statement of overriding consideration. Overriding considerations. Through the comment period, staff received one comment from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife on the draft EIR, requesting a minor change to the timing of one of our pre-construction surveys. That change wouldn't hinder project construction, so we just incorporated into the final EIR.
That's good that we were able to do the mitigation. That was for the, what do they call it? Roosting bats?
Yes, it was. They just moved the timeline of the survey closer to construction. The final EIR we're presenting today, it includes the response to comments, minor typo edits and clarifications, and the MMRP, but ultimately, no changes were necessary to the draft EIR findings and conclusions from when we started. Completing sequence. Yep. There's a number of steps that require specific documents to complete the CEQA process, and I'll discuss each one of these in the following slides. In this slide, you see there are several elements in the resolution document that are necessary for the board to certify the final EIR. Go ahead. Another document is the findings of fact, and it describes how the significant impacts were mitigated. This next document is the statement of overriding considerations. As previously discussed, there are significant environmental effects associated with the demolition of the wall, and therefore the board is required to adopt a statement of overriding considerations when approving the project. It's essentially a determination by the board that the benefits of having a reliable water system outweigh the impacts of the rock wall, of removing the rock wall. The next step is to adopt the MMRP, which provides the framework for implementing the measures adopted and incorporated into the project, or mitigate or avoid significant effects. And lastly is project approval under CEQA, where CEQA doesn't commit the district to proceeding with the project itself. It just completes the district's environmental review of the action. As I mentioned early on in the project, this is a grant-funded project, and the EIR is one of the deliverables under Phase 1. And all of the Phase 1 deliverables, once all the Phase 1 deliverables are submitted, staff will be seeking FEMA's review of potential Phase 2 funding. I also want to emphasize that Phase 2 funding for construction is not guaranteed at this time, and FEMA's timeline for reviewing and making a decision on that funding is unknown. So at this time, I'd like to provide you with your options, and I'll essentially be reading directly from the slides. For option 1, adopt proposed resolution certifying that the final EIR was presented to the board and the board has reviewed and considered the information contained in the final EIR prior to acting on the project, certifying that the final EIR reflects the independent judgment and analysis of the district and the information disclosed therein is accurate, adequate, and objective, certifying that the final EIR has been completed in compliance with CEQA. Continuing with option 1, adopting the findings of fact, adopting the statement of overriding considerations, adopting the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, approving the Flume 48 utility and infrastructure replacement project in accordance with CEQA, specifying that the document or other materials which constitute the record of proceedings upon which this decision is based shall be in the custody of the clerk to the board at the district headquarters, and directing staff to file a notice of determination with the El Dorado County Clerk and Governor's Office of Planning and Research. Or option 2, take. Okay, we don't have to go through that side. Option 1 is staff's recommendation.
I'll move for option 1 and thank staff for a very thorough educational EIR.
I'll second it, and thank you for the mitigation effort and the I don't know, call it a memorial, but the remembrance in front of the building. I think that's great.
I'd also like to point out, this isn't the first time we've seen this. We saw the draft EIR, I think you mentioned, was last year, late last year. So we've been working, you and the staff have been working this for a year to find all the issues, try to find mitigations, and so we're at the point now to approve the EIR, okay? And we have a motion and a second. Any other board comments? Yeah.
First of all, again, I know that EIRs are just a pain. They're just so many things, hoops you gotta jump through. But inconsistent with what Director Day had talked about the preservation of the wall, I had passed on my concerns about that. I think that just documenting things doesn't do the public service, and I'd like to see some way in which we can actually have some physical manifestation of that. And you know, I talked about recreating a very small portion someplace, or creating a miniature version. But that's just an idea. I would like to explore other ways in which we can actually preserve that, partially because right now all those rock walls are not accessible to the public at all. And it's a part of history that I think we should try to capture in a physical manifestation. And so I'd ask, you know, staff to explore different ways to do that. And who knows, maybe we can auction off pieces of the rock as a fundraiser.
We did work with SHPO in this case to acquire one of the boulders from the rock that or the wall that we'll place out front with some sort of interpretive story, because it doesn't only affect Flume 48, it's also Flume 45, Section 3. So there will be mention of the overall history and construction of those rock walls here at headquarters.
And, you know, it's an amazing feat of engineering before they had engineers like we do today. So it's really a testament that it has lasted so long. Thank you.
Okay, Director Enzini.
Yeah, one thought in my mind, and perhaps this is just something that we could approach with high schools. There are classes in the high school curriculum where students, or just maybe another youth organization, 4-H or something similar, who is a part of the environmental education system, could possibly have a little contest to help design one and participate, because not only will they learn the history of the flumes, which I think the older generation understand, but younger people don't realize the value of what's coming down from Echo Lake, Aloha. When I identify these to just even local citizens, they don't understand that until we show them the full picture. They don't all have an opportunity to go up there and see. However, when students are learning this, it becomes a generational thing, honoring the issue of how that water was, where it came from. I mean, we honor gold miners, but they're at the next generation where, okay, this is an important part on how we gave water to vineyards and apple orchards and how we provided that. So it may be overwhelming thought, but I bet it could be very easily handed off to a young leader who could take this on as a challenge, so.
I think we can also work with the water agency, which promotes ag in the classroom. And since many of these flumes were a result not only of gold mining, but primarily for agriculture, and see what they can do to help. You're an active participant.
I am, and perhaps if we were going to bring a physical manifestation of these pieces of infrastructure, hopefully there's some local contractors that might be willing to support the physical effort of it financially, just so we can show as much respect for our ratepayers and not add costs and complexity to these projects.
Well, I like Director Anzini's idea of sending the high school kids out there to do the demo. That's what I heard.
Most of the rock wall is gonna stay there as base for the new wall.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious, because with Director Penn's, I mean, what I was envisioning, like build a bench, but those boulders are probably rocks are a lot bigger than we could
A
tell.
lot bigger than the picture, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions or comments from the board? Are there any public comment on this item?
If members of the public would like to address the board on public hearing item number 11, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Dwyer does not appear that anyone is wishing to speak on public hearing item number 11, option 1, moved by Director Mansfield and seconded by Director Day. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Okay, thank you. Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Good job.
Thank you.
Moving on to workshop item number 12, the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. Okay, Mr. Money, you're on.
Good morning. John Money, Director of Engineering for the district, and this morning I'll be presenting the 2026 to 2030 Draft Capital Improvement Plan Workshop. Excuse me. So the district CIP, using a little bit different concept, so that not to confuse the two, we often refer to CIPs as capital improvement projects. This is the capital improvement plan, which serves to identify and prioritize and schedule capital projects or capital improvement projects over the upcoming 5-year period. This workshop today is part of the annual budget development cycle, and we will present today in a workshop forum, not for board action. We will return to the board for adoption at the following board meeting. And this plan will then be wrapped into both the operating budget workshop and fiscal plans in subsequent workshops.
Thank you, John. That's a good point. This is an excellent chance for the board and the public to make comment on our capital improvement plan.
Correct.
And debate and present alternatives and talk about it, because the next time we meet, when we're going to approve this plan, we're only doing this as a workshop today, but the next time we meet, we're going to hopefully approve the plan, which is an essential part of the budget. So this is a good time to discuss the issues.
Correct, and again, we're open to comment on this. Likely, the development of the plan is largely driven by our fiscal projections, so we've already incorporated a lot of that information. But that being said, that's why we're having the workshop, and we will come back with the final plan during the next board meeting. So an overview of today's workshop. We're going to begin by reviewing our current progress on our 25-29 capital improvement plan. Look at some of the projects that we've completed and other projects that are either underway in construction or advancing through the planning process. And then we'll proceed to the draft 2026-2030 CIP plan, discussion of how that plan was developed, and also discuss how we're trending on cost and a bit of a discussion on project deferrals that have factored into the plan. So starting off with a review of some of our completed or substantially complete projects. You'll see a list here, and we will progress on this as we go through the next couple of slides. So this might look familiar. We had a bit of discussion on this already this morning. So we did complete the replacement of our Flume 47A wooden flume. This project consisted of about 230 feet of wooden flume. And again, we replaced these structures for multiple reasons. First, the concrete canals protect from both landslides and rockfall, but probably more importantly from wildfire in the area as well. As Director Dwyer pointed out, it's also a safety issue, so we provide much better access as these controls are, or these canals are patrolled 3 times a week while the canal is active. So having staff out there on those 1.5-foot wide planks going down the side of the canal during inclement weather, we can avoid a good portion of that by giving them a work surface to patrol from and when needed, remove debris from the canal. I did want to point out that the completion of this brings us right up to about 45%, or we're running about 45% now of concrete canals. So we still have approximately 7,800 feet of wooden canal remaining, or about 1.5 miles. So these projects will continue for quite a while. However, when these are replaced, again, our intent is that this is a 100-year project. As long as they are maintained, almost an indefinite life moving forward. Last thing I wanted to point out is that we're expecting about 4% change orders on this project, so we are well within our project budget, and overall, again, this has been a great success for the district.
I think from our previous discussion on the EIR and Flume 48, it looked like 400 and some feet for, I think I did the math, it came out to like $20,000 a foot. So how many miles do we have?
1.5 miles. So again, very expensive. We are looking at a master plan of these facilities, and again, we do look for grant opportunities whenever plausible.
Thank you.
So moving on to our Silver Lake East campground water system. This is actually a facility that we will not own or maintain. We're handing this over to the Forest Service. However, on the good side of that is this is the last of our Project 184 relicense requirements. So again, we're happy to have those projects all marked off at this time. This well and water system do supply water to both the EID and Forest Service, Silver Lake campgrounds. And again, we won't be operating this moving forward, but we will be monitoring and working with the Forest Service to make sure that we remain in compliance with our FERC permit requirements. So moving on to our water and wastewater generators. So over the past several years, we have been installing multiple generators, so actually 15 under one specific program at various lift stations and pump stations throughout the district. This was in conjunction with a $4.7 million reimbursable grant from FEMA, again, as part of the PG&E's PSPS, or Power Safety Power Shutoff program. So again, it just kind of puts in context some of the regulatory and programmatic hurdles that the district has to address. So prior to 2019, PG&E was considered a reliable, sustainable power source for the district. That has not been the case over the past years, and so we've had this monumental outlay of cost for multiple generators throughout the district so that we can, again, maintain reliable service during any of those PG&E outages. I also wanted to mention on the right-hand side, we also replaced the main generator for our Reservoir 1 water treatment plant. That generator, I think, was about 40 years old when we replaced it, and it after a catastrophic failure. So basically, it was non-usable after an event about 2 years ago. So placement of that new generator, as well as moving some of the electrical equipment, including the automatic transfer switch, out of our main control room there for safety reasons. Again, a huge benefit to the district and shores up that facility moving forward. Moving on to our Bass Lake Tanks rehabilitation, we finally wrapped this project up. We had numerous setbacks as we went through this construction or recoding process. The first, in that top left-hand photo, you can see we ran into some very significant corrosion of the ceiling panels and structural rafters and girders in that tank. So we resolved that by a pretty significant change order with the contractor. The contractor then proceeded to blast and coat the tank and ran into quite a few missteps with that because it's they used a new coating. The previous coating that we were using or had been using is no longer NSF certified. And so again, it's one of those regulatory issues that we ran into, and we've got to continue to shift and adjust as we move forward. So regardless, at the end of the day, the contractor did get a hold of how to properly apply that coating, and we wrapped up the exterior of the second tank early this year.
Done. So I remember when we talked about this before with the new coating. Now we're looking at not necessarily speccing that in and using other ones, or giving the contractors choices, I guess.
Correct. So this was a specific paint product that was new to the market, again, sold as a replacement for that coating that was no longer available. There is a separate coating that is more costly, and so we will not allow this coating moving forward. We'll opt for that more costly option on future tanks.
I mean, maybe just keep an eye on this as it gets into the market and people get used to using it, and then it might come back as an alternative maybe in a few years.
It is. Absolutely. And there's always improvements. As we're proceeding through this project, actually the manufacturer was issuing bulletins and updated guidance on how to apply this paint. And one of the problems was it was applied in cooler weather, so it has to be, I think, 70 degrees and rising. So, and again, this is not just unique to paints, it's unique to, or it happens all throughout the chemicals we use and other regulations that affect the district. One of the other projects that was listed on here was our corrosion study, and so that resulted from increased regulation on the additives that we had to prevent corrosion throughout our system, our distribution system. And so we're still using the same chemical, which is, I was looking for Patrick, but he's not here, orthophosphate came to me. But it was a different dosing method. So we had not only proved that we had no problems with that orthophosphate dosing schedule, but we were so successful that we were only sampling that. We were able to prove that for Department of Health Services. So we were only sampling, I think, every other year. However, once you change those regulations, we were back to monthly sampling. And so that's a huge cost, having our guys go out and do that whole sampling program, multiple times a year when they were doing either once a year or once every other year previously. So we're constantly addressing those increased regulations and changes as they are applied to our systems.
Thank you.
Moving on to our collection stabilization project. So in the winter of 2023, portions of our service area experienced up to a 200-year storm, which caused quite a bit of damage to our collection system. After evaluating some of our vulnerabilities, we elected to complete this collection stabilization project where we replaced or rehabilitated 3 manholes, placed 4 new ones, and then rebuilt 3 creek crossings. So you'll see 2 of these creek crossings up on the board. It's important to note that both of these crossings were originally completed with asbestos concrete pipe or AC pipe. And that material is known for being brittle. And so having a brittle concrete pipe in the middle of a creek during high flows is just generally not good practice. On top of that, you'll see on that top left-hand picture, we had previously tried to armor at least one of those. And due to ongoing flows, the creek had actually undermined that embankment. So we were in risk of that whole structure, again, failing into that creek. So each of these crossings was replaced with a new ductile iron pipe, which is much more resilient. But we also applied riprap, as you can see in that lower left picture, upstream and downstream of each of these crossings, which allow that area to be more protected and to silt in during future high flows. Moving on to some of our projects under construction, you'll see a list up here, and we'll proceed on to a couple slides. The first of which is the Slide Park Intertie, which really consists of two large pieces of infrastructure. One, a 22-inch pipeline connecting our Reservoir A and Reservoir 1 water treatment plants, which will allow bi-directional flow between those 2 plants, so we can take one or the other out of service for maintenance. The water will be supplied by the other. From Reservoir 1 down to Reservoir A, again, that's gravity flow. From Reservoir A back up to Reservoir 1, we require a new pump station, which is also being constructed as part of this project. So I just wanted to kind of point out some of the scale of what goes into this project. So you'll see in that upper left-hand photo, there's a orange dot there on the pipe. That's actually a grade setter that's checking the final grade before backfill. So you see that person on top of the pipe. That just kind of puts into perspective the trenching and excavation that's required to place this pipeline. It's also reflected there in the lower left. You can see as we are proceeding up the north of Weber Creek, coming up to Ridgeway, again, the construction corridor that's required to construct that pipeline.
John, you mentioned that this will enable us to supplement either Reservoir 1 or water treatment plant 1 or A and take them down for maintenance. But won't this also enable us to feed down the hill to lower elevations? I'm thinking of keeping the Bass Lake tanks filled in high demand periods. If we have enough conveyance through the Gold Hill intertie.
That's a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
So really, this pipeline primarily is designed to provide some resiliency and redundancy to our system. So it does allow us to do that in the event that one of these water supplies are compromised or taken offline. In order to get the water from either of these down the hill, likely long-term, we're going to need some new transmission mains, which we are evaluating and are included in our updated water supply master plan. Largely, those facilities are close to being tapped out at this point, so we get as much water as we can through these plants down the hill, through both the Gold Hill intertie, the Pleasant Oak main coming around the south side. But we are looking for opportunities to increase that yield coming down.
Thank you.
Let's see, where was I at? So as far as schedule, again, we are on schedule for this project as well. The pipeline is scheduled to be disinfected or complete and disinfected by, I believe, early March. And the pump station is expected to be complete by the end of this year. So the completion of both those aspects of this project, again, does put us in good position to receive the full $10 million grant that we were previously awarded by Department of Water Resources to help offset the construction costs of this project. Moving on to our Reservoir 4 and Reservoir 7 tank upgrades. These are a recoating of these facilities. So shown are just two, but we are also doing improvements to Reservoir 7B, which is not shown here because we have not started on that project yet. I did want to point out on the Reservoir 4 photo here that is the new low-rise, low-sheen aluminum domes that we are using on quite a few, or anticipating use on quite a few of our facilities moving forward. Again, the incorporation of those aluminum roof structures minimize that corrosion that we have seen on several of the photos to date, and we'll see one more coming up here. Reservoir 4 is, as you can see, the dome is complete. They are in the process of blasting and coating that tank. We anticipate that site will be complete, I believe, in February of this year. Reservoir 7, you can see that we have removed the dome for that facility. We are in process of, we're waiting for the receipt of that new aluminum dome. There were some structural modifications that needed to be changed at that facility. We'll proceed through placing that dome and recoating that tank. It should be complete by early spring so that we can bring that second tank back online for summer flows. And then we'll proceed to draining, as that tank's back online, draining tank 7B and completing the facility or the improvements on that project, probably in late 2026. Moving on, so we have multiple projects in the works at our Reservoir A and Reservoir 1 water treatment plants. These are largely driven by our water treatment plant assessments that we completed about 3 years ago. This project at the Reservoir A replaces our backwash to waste valves, and so the way that this plant was constructed is there's 3 valve clusters for each of our filters. Each of those clusters have 4 valves for the adjacent filter cells that are around each cluster. So the failure of any one of these valves can require that whole cluster is taken off. So we can have one valve fail, and that would be a 1/3 reduction in the capacity of the water treatment plant. So As we got in to investigate this, we did see that these valves are at very close to the end of their useful lives. You can see in that picture on the right that some of them are actively leaking at this point, as well as some severe corrosion to their actuators. Also, these actuators are below grade for 2 of these clusters, which lead to additional confined space and safety concerns for the district. So all of these actuators will be raised above surface or above the working grade when this project is completed. We're currently under contract, and we're expecting our contractor to mobilize probably in December for this work. Again, this work has to be completed while the plant is at minimal flow so that we can take those clusters offline and still produce enough water during the winter demands. And the last project, this should look familiar. We heard at the board just in this last meeting, we are moving forward with the emergency replacement of our Reservoir 1 floating cover. We did notice some significant deficiencies that were no longer repairable at this location in the drainage troughs on the cover, and so we are facilitating an emergency repair at this site. I did want to point out that this is one of 7 floating covers in our district, and so and all of those are about the same vintage, approaching about 40 years old. So we are also in the process of doing a water storage master plan, which will identify and address those 6 covers, as well as the failing cover or the coatings at multiple of our storage reservoirs, and prioritize that moving forward. Moving on to some of our ongoing projects and initiatives. So these are largely projects that are in the design phase or planned. I did want to point out we've been talking a lot about flumes today. You will see that Flume 45, Section 3, and Flume 48 are both listed. Both of these projects are currently 100% designed, and as of this morning, the EIRs have been work has been completed on both projects as well. Flume 45, Section 3 is currently postponed. We had proceeded on a design and hopeful construction grant from FEMA under their BRIC, or Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities program. However, earlier this year, that program was completely canceled and funding was clawed back. So we'll look for additional funding opportunities for that site. However, we are moving forward with the Flume 48. With Mike's presentation this morning, we are moving forward with a submission to FEMA for Phase 2 funding under a separate grant program, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and are hoping for significant contributions to the construction of that facility. Moving on to some of our ongoing projects and initiatives.
Okay, John, so it's safe to say that with the cancellation of the BRIC program, the competition for award under the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program is going to get that much stiffer. Yep. And our potential for getting funded is, commensurately diminished.
Yeah, I'm not going to exactly comment on that. However, I will say that
I'll comment on it.
We have been
It stinks.
we have been very successful. Brian Deason, I think he left, but he actually, we've been so successful that FEMA had him present earlier in the year and give example, or Cal OES, who is the state administrator for FEMA, asked Brian to present because of the success that we've had and how we've organized those FEMA applications. So although we are not, obviously, it is a more challenging market, I will say at the same time that we are very well poised for any funding opportunities that come out.
Thank you.
So getting back to our ongoing projects or programs and initiatives, so we have made a significant effort this year to begin to organize some of our ongoing facility maintenance and rehabilitation into programs. Liz Carrington has been heading up this effort. You'll see at the bottom of that list, what we're trying to do is receive or organize these programs into the same level of detail that the board has been apprised for our vehicle replacements, where we identify all of our assets, we identify a replacement schedule, and then moving forward, we can identify if there are funding deficits or deferrals from what we would like to replace versus what we can actually replace under our funding constraints. So ongoing projects, again, the Silver Lake Dam is our first candidate here. I did want to point out that being constructed in 1876, we are coming up on the 150th anniversary of the Silver Lake Dam, as shown in that upper left-hand photo. Again, this has been reiterated multiple times, but the wooden crib or the wooden timbers that were present in that original dam construction are still present in the core of that dam, requiring a complete replacement of this facility.
Can we rebuild that outside the headquarters?
That is going to be a lot harder. I'm going to guess when you touch those, yeah, there's not going to be much left. So. Lincoln Logs. So we have progressed past the 60% design on this project. We actually had a 60% design workshop with both FERC and DSOD a couple months back, and have received and are incorporating their comments for the 100% design, which will be due to the district this summer. We are also progressing through our CEQA and NEPA efforts, which will both need to be complete before we can reach out to FERC for ultimately a FERC license modification to operate the construct and then operate the new facility. We are intending under the proposed CIP to go to construction for this facility in 2029 at this point. And likely this will be a 2-year construction period, so 2029 to 2030, with a total construction cost of just under $49 million at this time.
This is a must-do. It's not only a FERC requirement, but also dam safety. There's a lot of agencies that are telling us we have to do this. So what's our wiggle room? Do we have any?
So I'm not going to directly address that because I'd have to have John Kessler probably in our room, our chief dam safety engineer. There's often a bit of wiggle room. Obviously, if we don't have the funding, it becomes problematic. However, the longer we push this project out, the more we risk that FERC mandates and establishes our own timelines for us to complete this project. I think we tentatively identified this project. I want to say around 2017, in that kind of in that time frame.
I think it was before that. I think I was in high school.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess that PG&E, our predecessor, and the district has known that this is on the to-do list for quite a while. Again, the longer there's a zero safety tolerance on any dam facilities, as we recently became very aware of with the Oroville Dam and other infrastructure around the country. So. We do run significant risk if we continue to delay this project. Next slide. Moving on to our El Dorado Hills water treatment plant upgrades. So again, this project would upgrade our El Dorado Hills water treatment plant from a current capacity of 19.5 MGD or million gallons a day to a interim build out of 24 million gallons a day. You'll notice on the picture on the left, anything with a red box around it or red highlight, those are all facilities that will be modified or replaced during this project, resulting in a build out that you'll see there on the left. So largely, while keeping this plant online, we will be completely reconstructing this facility. We are currently, we've received we've moved past the basis of the design, we've incorporated comments. We are anticipating a 60% design submittal just after the first of the year, I believe at the end of January. We've also began outreach to DHS to make sure that they are on board with any of the treatment modifications or proposed treatment processes at this facility. We will expect to proceed with design throughout the year and should have 100% plans by the end of 2026.
John, I make a suggestion just because of public perception and our push to be transparent. I think I would suggest, well, first of all, I thought the $50 million for Silver Lake Dam, I was shocked at the cost of that. And well, it seems like a bargain now when you look at $175 million, and it'll probably be $200 million for the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant. I think the name, the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant, it's a long name, upgrades is a misnomer because that's really not the primary reason. That's a benefit of, but we are reconstructing or rebuilding, as you see with all the red highlighted things, virtually the whole facility.
Correct.
And I think we need to communicate that to people, that this project is not, oh, we're just upgrading it for growth. Well, I don't want to pay $175, $200 million for new people. It has less to do with that and more to do with it. It's for existing people, and because this plant is old. When we took the tour, I got in trouble because there was a wall there or a tank thing or something that looked like it was crumbling, and I started to poke it, and everybody yelled at me, "Don't! The water might start coming out." But anyhow, I would just suggest that to be more upfront about why we're doing it is include the word rebuild or reconstruction.
I agree with Director Day because during that tour, we're kind of like looking at this thing that's been providing services for all of El Dorado residents, most of them, 30% of it, right? And how much, I guess let's just say it's not an upgrade, it's a rehab proper. Right. So rehabilitation is probably more of a definition so that people understand that, yeah, we're going to be increasing the amount of water coming in. However, the existing system can't acknowledge that.
Correct. And just to be transparent, we are replacing this for two reasons. One is we are approaching capacity, but we have been approaching capacity since, I believe, 2008 was when we saw our last large water spike. Demand subsided after that for a bit, but we're back up to those 2008 demands currently. And then again, so there is a demand aspect. We want to make sure that we have enough capacity and we don't have to issue any restrictions on water use for El Dorado Hills. Also, again, yes, this facility is aged out. We have, again, as we did that water treatment plant assessment, there's a long list of critical items that are beyond their useful life, as reported in that summary. So,
That's a good point, John. We did pay for a third party to come do an assessment and make recommendations. It's one of those don't ask the question if you can't stand the answer kind of things.
Absolutely, and in this same ballpark, which we are not addressing yet, is our Reservoir 1 water treatment plant, which is, you'll see the same level of aging and failing assets that we are picking off one at a time. The floating cover is a great example. However, if you're doing these one-offs, then ultimately we likely spend more money because we're solving problems that don't bring us to the ultimate solution for that facility. So there are there's going to be some rework if we continue down that path.
The 174 million, I can't remember if we've had a project that approached that amount of money.
We'll get to that. So it is on par with what we spent, if you adjust for inflation, with what we spent for the last El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant improvements. So, and this, for these large facilities, and a reminder, we have 2 wastewater treatment plants and 5 water treatment plants. So again, we've got to do a better job of planning and raising our being prudent with our rates to accommodate these long-term improvements. I did want to close by saying that, so this,
Yeah, the other question, and this is the one that I get all the time, and we've read it in the local social media, whatever, that the approval of new homes going in is the big issue to most people's mind. Do we have the infrastructure to handle that? And that's always a question that's asked me, specifically in the area where I live. Do we have the infrastructure? Why are we maintaining these that we really have no say? And I keep telling them that this is a sphere of influence, and we're required to do that.
yeah, not only are we required to, but any development that comes within the district service area is required to pay its own way. So we actually get a significant amount of infrastructure handed over to us. We inspect as these developments are being built, so we will inspect the infrastructure, but the developer pays for all of those mains, service connections, pump stations, lift stations that go into those facilities.
But the capacity
Yeah, in addition, they also pay the FCC charges, or facility capacity charges. So they are buying their way in to the capacity of our district, which is why we also come to the board and update those FCC reports and charges as we move forward.
It's also, El Dorado County is not growing that much. It's less than, it's like 1% or something like that. A lot of the growth is in Folsom, but people conflate that with us, and they think we're providing services, even though we are to a small group of 500 homes. But it's a complicated answer. They ask a simple question, and then you have to spend 5 minutes explaining it to them. But we're really not, El Dorado County, we're not growing very fast, and that's actually part of a problem. But anyhow, it's I know I get the same questions.
I know we have bumped up against the capacity of this plant, and I see Patrick's escaped, hiding out someplace. But we got very close to the capacity of this and just managed through by the skin of our teeth, as I remember the briefings from last year. What can we do to shave the peaks? Because that's really part of the problem, is when we plan for new infrastructure, when we plan for new homes, we look at averages. What's our average demand? What's our water rights? We have sufficient water rights, and if you look at averages, half an acre foot per year per dwelling, that fits within the thing. But what you don't see is the big spikes, the peak in demand that drive the capacity issue. So in addition to repairing the plant or expanding the plant, what can we do to try to level out demand and bring some of those peaks down? You know, we could implement alternate day watering, and just make it system-wide, which would help mitigate some of this while we scratch our head and figure out what to do next.
Yeah, I'm sure that, so there are multiple options. So curtailments would be one. We are, again, looking at supplementation from new transmission mains as well. How do we optimize our water storage tanks and their delivery throughout the system. So again, to be clear, the existing capacity of 19.5 does not fully supply El Dorado Hills. We are already relying on additional transmission from the Gold Hill Intertie and other facilities from up the hill, conveying treated water from Res 1 and Res A. So it's a large system. We treat it as a one source system. So same rate across the district. We treat all of our customers the same. And it's really going to be a longer term balance of how do we manage that. If it comes to a point where we do need to defer this, and we'll discuss the funding on some later slides, that's what it would likely entail is curtailments, water shortage. We do have established protocols that we can get into it. Our drought protocols, we could do that. I will say that, again, we hit these peak rates in about 2008, and there was a significant decline. So throughout the last almost 20 years, we have seen reductions because of increased water efficiency. So at some point, you can only go so far on that. So we still run the risk that despite curtailments, that we still could be pushing up against that threshold. The other is, and we mentioned earlier, is we run the risk of failure if we continue to push these aged assets past their working life and don't replace them.
I have a question. I past suggestion of like alternate day watering and stuff like that would not be a hardship for people because frankly, I'm in the landscape and irrigation business, and a lot of people overwater. And during the summer, they just set it and forget it. And this would actually could benefit their landscapes as well as helping them with their water bill. But it does raise the question with peaks and that sort of thing, and with the average per dwelling use trending down as people become more efficient, lots are smaller, people are removing lawns and so on. Are we accounting for that in our calculations and designs? Are we risking overbuilding if this trend of more and more efficiency continues? And we also may face future state mandates as well. Are we risking creating capacity that we never need?
So we've had very detailed discussions on this and trying to figure out what those projections are. So a lot of this is we can only do what we can do with the data. We can't completely predict how that water use is going to trend. I will say that most of our infrastructure is already built out, so we are not subject to the same landscaping requirements. For instance, if you go down to Folsom and see some of their near zero, I don't know the term for it, but there's no lawns, it's all on drip irrigation. We have not implemented, and I don't think have any plans to implement those facilities for our current residents. That being said, we do think that the upgrading to the 24 MGD is appropriate. When you're designing these kind of facilities, you can't design for just, so we went to 21 MGD. The magnitude of the project would remain approximately the same. So there's limited cost savings by reducing it from 24 to 23 or 22. As you can see, again, we are rebuilding most of that site, and so that's where those costs come into effect. I will say that as part of that design, there is room to make a further expansion, which we are not pursuing. So we will have room for additional development or additional water use. However, we are not funding any of that additional infrastructure that's needed for that capacity. So we're putting ourselves in a good position, but we're building out to what we feel is appropriate.
And I'd imagine there's longevity and maintenance advantages to having a facility that, say, you're operating at 2/3 throttle instead of 90 to 100% throttle 24/7.
Correct. And largely, again, we do not run the El Dorado Hills plant at 19.5. However, it just takes one day. I mean, it's those extreme heat events where everybody turns on their water. If we run out, we cannot run out of water. If we do, we compromise our system. We are subject to boil water notices. It's something that we cannot exceed what we can produce. Otherwise, we run into significant issues through our whole system. All right, let's move on. So this year we are also, we've completed the design of our Strolling Hills pipeline improvements. So this is the last leg shown there in green of the conveyance system from the town of El Dorado down to our Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant. Construction shown there in yellow and red for the mother lode force main has been occurring over about the last 10 years as we have funds to advance that project. With the completion of this project, which is about 10,000 feet of 20-inch PVC, this portion will be largely gravity line. But that will complete that link and allow us to use the full capacity of our El Dorado lift station there in El Dorado. That'll be good for our crews. It will minimize the emergency storage of wastewater in adjacent ponds at that facility. And also, on occasion, we've had to haul that during extreme events as well, so minimize the cost of that hauling during extreme rainfall events. We are planning on bidding this project, I believe, in November this year, and you'll see this trend likely moving forward in this year and in years to come. As we're going to be trying to plan our projects for bidding during the late fall winter period, November through probably March. And that basically allows, we think affords a larger contractor pool and more participation in our bids, because that's the time of the year that contractors are looking to fill their spring and summer schedule. So by planning our bid awards or our bid advertisements, we're hoping to minimize some of those costs as well as we move forward.
I think that's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. I'm trying to time these things a little bit. We can't always, but I think that's excellent.
Right. The market's always going to be the market, but
Right.
we're going to do what we can to again, increase the bid pool and hopefully minimize those bid prices as they come in.
Right.
Again, the project on the right there is a photo from our mother lode force main replacement. So likely it'll be very similar scale of construction as we go through and replace the last leg of that line.
Are we gonna tell PG&E where we put the pipe?
We always tell PG&E.
Yeah, I know.
They just have to ask. Moving on to
By the way, did PG&E call USA? Like, for the
I am
project?
going to refrain from commenting on that.
Good idea.
Moving on to our Bridlewood tank.
Paragon of decorum.
Moving on to our Bridlewood tank rehabilitation. So the Bridlewood tank is our largest recycled water storage tank. Again, similar issues at this facility. This tank is approaching 21 years in age and has not been recoated. So we are seeing that increased corrosion in the roof structures. Moving forward, we plan to replace this tank as well with an aluminum dome and plan on bidding that project and then recoating the tank. We plan on bidding that project again in this upcoming winter season. Likely, this project will have a 2 or 3 year construction window. Some of the deficiencies of this site are that it's a single tank. And so we need this tank to be largely online in order to meet the recycled water demands for El Dorado Hills and Cameron Park. So the first year we will demo the top replace the new aluminum dome, bring the tank back online. The following year, we will blast the interior and recoat it, bring the tank back online, and then the last year, complete the stripping and recoating of the exterior tank. So again, while we try to look forward on how we can maximize, really this should have been 2 tanks at a minimum, and preferably concrete tanks moving forward.
Put a second tank?
We do, and I know that I'm not intimately familiar with that review process. So I do know that we looked at both complete tank replacement at this facility, for instance, replacing it with either new steel or new concrete tanks, and then splitting that into 2 different tanks. And I believe, again, our funding is constrained, and it wasn't cost effective to replace the tank at this time. I believe that was our decision tree getting to where we are today.
Thanks.
All right, so moving on to our draft 2026-2030 CIP. We'll be going over, again, an increased focus as we've developed this program this year, prioritizing and organizing our projects. That's been a large workload that our engineering manager, Liz Carrington, has taken on. So throughout this year, she's been meeting with our operation and maintenance managers on a monthly basis, again, to try to better identify and prioritize projects as they make their way onto the CIP. We'll go over the prioritization, and then again, I'm going to touch on kind of how our deferrals or constrained funding is limited the CIP moving forward. So as far as prioritization, the district has historically used a priority 1, 2, and 3 program. This is a fairly old and kind of a legacy way of ranking CIP programs. So we begin with priority 1, which are immediate health and safety concerns, regulatory mandates, or projects that the district has already committed to and is contractually obligated for. Priority 2 are projects that have instances of reliability or replacement or need replacement. In the original criteria, there's increased revenue, which we don't have very many options for, but we do have options for cost savings. So example projects are our solar and battery installations that we've used over the past couple of years. And then the last is increased capacity. So again, making sure that we have the adequate capacity within our water and wastewater systems to convey our flows.
John, I don't think you should call this prioritization method old, because I was the one that suggested it. So
I will get into this.
That's a better word, yes.
If it helps you, early in my career, I did similar projects, so we'll get into that.
Thank you.
Priority 3 project, really these are more of our programmatic and nice to haves. So they improve efficiency of our system, maintain the level of service or increase our levels of service, or provide a community benefit. So just quantifying those 3 priorities, overall our draft CIP has 152 projects. 45, or roughly a third, are priority 1. 95, or 2/3, priority 2, and only 12 are priority 3. And so for those of you, again, that are familiar with like the Franklin-Covey time management system, we want to move out of that. Everything is critical. High criticality, high importance. You got to get it down to planned and organized level of effort. So that's our goal, again, as we're setting up these programs and being a little bit more strategic as we move forward.
In your recent experience with previous cycles, have those percentages you just stated been trending heavier towards priority one, or are we working towards achieving the?
Since I've been here, I think we're pretty much right there in that priority one, priority two. We've had several priority threes that have been on the CIP in the past, and again, we don't get to those projects. Some of the examples of that is, for instance, making sure that we are doing adequate modeling of our system so that we can, again, figure out how we can optimize water flow through our system. We're adequately planning for capacity constraints. And then we're doing that long-term asset management of our system. So for instance, I'll give one for instance. I was going to save this for a later slide, but we have approximately 1,100 miles of pipe in our distribution system. AWWA's recommendation is that you are planning for about a 1% renewal rate. So that's 11 miles of pipe each year that we should be looking at replacing or renewing. And we've never got anywhere close to that. And in order of magnitude, we're looking at probably up to about 20 million annually per their recommendations for just water distribution and transmission main renewal. So currently, you'll see on a later slide, we are only doing mandated projects. And so those are water relocations that are required by the county or state because our facilities they have larger projects and need to relocate our facilities as part of those projects.
But
So-
in your defense and in the engineering and in the district's defense, we're really playing catch-up on the projects that we've deferred too long. And that's incumbent on all of us, the board as well. And so as long as we're trying to play catch-up, it's very difficult to do that step that'll get us ahead of the curve. So we just need to keep that in mind and try to do the best we can with what we got.
Just to John's point of being more strategic, I will say, since this was first implemented, in the beginning, the first year or two, everything was priority one.
Right.
And which, as you talked about, it was a problem. And I think we have gotten better, and engineering has gotten better at trying to balance it more and recognize that everything can't be priority one. So I think we have gotten better at it.
And we hope to continue to get better. So as I was going to get to on the right side of this slide is what we intend to do is move to more, again, a more strategic long-term planning approach where we consider the risk of consequence or the risk of an asset falling and its consequence. So those two, again, it's similar to that Franklin-Covey quadrant. You can plot that out and see how each of your facilities, and that way we are addressing our most critical or most our assets with the highest rate of consequence of failure as we move forward. So we're putting our money most effectively, allocating our funds most effectively throughout the district. So we're hoping to move to that this year. We'll see as we work on other projects as well. But long term, we'll be switching to that asset management philosophy as we prioritize our CIP, which is consistent with asset management philosophies that have really been kind of hit maturity in the 2000s to 2010. So. Yep. So with that said, on this screen you can see our total planned draft CIP. We are looking at upwards of $360 million in total expenditures over a 5-year period. I will point out that in 2028, 2029, you'll see large increases, and that again is that El Dorado Hills water treatment plant and Silver Lake Dam construction contracts that we are currently planning awarding in those 2 years. Go next slide. So how are we comparing with other previous years? So with in comparison to our current CIP, it's about a 12% cost increase. Again, the largest contributor to that is the $223 million in combined funding for those two projects. I will say that right now, funding for both of those projects has not yet been committed. So we'll be looking at a combination of both debt financing, grant funding, and as we alluded to earlier, FCC offsets for developer buy-in to those two projects.
John, is there any issue, because those are two very, very large, complicated projects, of them being close to concurrent with each other and straining staff resources?
Staff? I don't believe so. I think we did stagger them. Originally, we had them both going in 2028, again, because we've continued to kind of push these projects out. So we have staggered the two of them, but really that'll be by separate staff. So one or two staff will be dedicated to the El Dorado Hills water treatment plant, and our chief dam safety engineer and maybe another engineer will be supporting the Silver Lake Dam effort. So I believe that we have adequate staffing for both of those projects. Go ahead, next slide. So next slide shows, again, kind of putting some of this into context of how our spending has trended since 2008. Again, in that lighter blue, you'll see those large expenditures for the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant and Silver Lake Dam. Going on to the opposite side, the far left of the graph, you'll see the large expenditures we had in 2008 and 2008 and 2009. And those largely entailed the build out or the upsizing of our El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant. The gray bars, you'll see the two tones, and so again, that's the gray is the amount attributed to inflation. So all this is in current 2025 dollars. I will say, per Pat's comment earlier, that if we're keeping up with spending, you'll see the blue, the darker blue in the CIP. So really, that's our programmatic spending. So likely we are not keeping up with our historical or otherwise spending across the board. So we would like to focus on bringing that base level of funding up in upcoming years.
Before we leave this slide, if I may, one of the things that I appreciated about George being on the board was his historical knowledge, and it's very useful. And I think that maybe now it's a little bit on me, because this kind of represents my history a little bit with EID. And I like this slide. It's one of my favorite slides because it does convey a lot of information. And you get a good picture over time of what's going on. And the little bit of the board, since, well, also to give you some context, 2010, or I believe it was early 2010 is when Jim started, and then I came on the board at the end of 2011. And what Jim inherited was the previous management and the previous board went on, and if you see, there'd be another spike if we went a year back, went on a very large spending spree. It was the go-go days of the 2000s. The economy was booming, real estate was booming, and FCC money was flush and just flowing in, and the EID board was and management at the time were not the only ones, but they were not. I think they believed, or they appeared to believe, that it was just last forever, and so they went on a building spree, and they did not adjust rates to account for all that. It went into $300 million of debt when before we'd had very little or marginal amount of debt, and so that created problems. And then when Jim came on board, he had to clean that up. I mean, examples, we built the Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant. I don't believe it's ever come anywhere close to capacity. They built it anticipating tremendous forever future growth, and that's not come to pass. This building, as an example, was built when we had 320-some employees. We were way overstaffed and had way overhired under the previous regime. And they again, and they thought the boom was going to continue, and they built this building where we have now unused spaces, and we're down to 225 or whatever it is, where we're much more efficient. And Jim had to clean a lot of that up. The previous regimes passed, and again, they weren't alone. A lot of government agencies in the state did it. Unsustainable pension benefits that we've had to now, work on ratcheting down and making more sustainable. But again, all of that was based off of, you could see that big spike of building without corresponding rate increases. Now, the boards, since I've been here, 2011, has never said no to a project that the management has brought, except for, I believe, the only one I can recall was, I believe it was like a $500,000 project related to Outingdale, and we were just so sick of the costs of Outingdale that the whole board said no and on that, but not on anything else. So it's not per se the board has been kicking the can down the road on projects. It's been what management determined we were capable of doing at the time. And we have had tremendous, a number of rate increases. In 2011, there was a rate increase passed that over the subsequent years doubled the rates, and we have doubled them again, or are on path to double them again. So it's again, not, if you want to go back and blame boards in the 20th century or the early 2000s, maybe, but really, since Jim was here and I've been here, the board has been approving virtually every project. And now staff sometimes delays things and defers things because they know, well, how are we going to pay for it, or staff can't handle that many projects at once. But those are normal operating constraints, I think. So I just want to present that just as historical context. And then we come to 2028, and it's kind of like the snake that swallowed the raccoon. It's a big thing, and I know we need to do it. But, and I believe we've talked about it, and the concept of looking at our CIPs 10 and 15 years out, not trying to determine costs, because I know that's really hard to do. But we can certainly have, maybe I'll suggest another rating scale of, we have small, medium, large, and huge projects, and that's the only label we need to give them 10 years out. This is gonna, the water treatment plant, that's gonna be huge. So I would like to see us as a board and as management as looking at that 10 and 15 years, so we can see these big things coming down the road sooner. And John, you've talked about it, wanting to be more strategic about the planning, so which I wholeheartedly support. But I think looking at slides like this, it puts things in perspective. But again, it's not, historically, in the last 15 years, the board has not been kicking the can down the road. We've been just trying to manage things as staff has with what the resources that we had.
If I might answer or speak to that, yes, we're trying to plan ahead beyond the 5-year CIP that you see here. And that is something that we will bring to the board in the future to give you that perspective of what lies beyond this. However, I will tell you that my perspective at this point is there is an immense amount of deferral of critical projects because we do not have funding to undertake them. And these are the examples that the board continuously sees about these emergency projects that come up that we have to undertake. They're not on the CIP list because we thought we could defer them for longer. The problem with those deferrals is we do not have the crystal ball to figure out when they're going to fail. And some of them fail faster than others. There is a really long list of deferrals in the multi-tens of millions of dollars beyond what you're seeing in the 5-year. And so I don't want anyone to feel because we're not showing you anything beyond this, that there isn't a list of things out there. But we're working on getting better estimates of what that looks like and what those projects are. And you'll see later in John's presentation, he's going to touch on some of those deferred projects. The deferred projects are a combination of we do not have sufficient funding to undertake those. We're barely able to undertake the ones that you're seeing in our 5-year plan. It's a combination of staff, right? It goes back to funding. We have the staff we have to try to be as efficient as we can be. And yes, we are limited sometimes in how many projects we can take forward. The largest factor that impacts our ability to undertake the 5-year CIP is funding. It's not even going to staffing, the people we have to engage in these different projects. And so we are going to have to make some serious decisions over the next couple of years here. I mentioned in the last board meeting, we're going to have to do our next cost of service analysis and take a look at that for that 5-year timeline. But a lot of the funding for all of those things factor into that. And I will say, I do think the years when, and I don't know exactly how long ago we had the 0 rate increases per year, those catch up with you at some point in time. I would go so far as to say we probably need to ensure once we do our cost of service analysis that we're factoring in inflation at the very least. Because when you don't factor that in, you're eating into the funding. That means you have less funding for CIP projects because then your operational costs are eating into those things. Those are just high-level things that I'm seeing, and we're trying to work with. Staff's been great with engaging and working on that long-term plan. We had to bring the 5-year CIP for approval by the board. So this is what we show you, but as we move forward, we will be giving you glimpses into what that long-range financial plan looks like. I would like to see us go out 30 years. We have a perspective on what's going to happen in the next 30 years. Now, again, it's grossly estimated because that's all we can do, but it gives you a perspective on going out beyond the 5 years. What are we potentially looking at? And we can talk in that timeline more specifically about what that looks like, what kind of funding is going to factor into meeting those needs. It can't all just be rate adjustments. It's going to be a combination of a number of different things. But as you know, grants are not guaranteed. And so while we try, things can change politically. And that doesn't mean we're going to get the grants that we need to help us move some of these projects forward. And I also would like to see us make better use of state revolving funds from the state of California. I've seen it used on huge projects. From where I came from, I would like to see the district do more of that. Bond financing is never going to go away. We don't have that opportunity, but maybe balancing it out a little more is better for the district and our ratepayers as we move forward.
Yeah, trying to, and I think staff is getting better and better at this over the years of averaging it out, I guess. There's always going to be peaks. You get a big project like this. But it's kind of like what we do with our looking at our debt obligations and trying to not have this crazy roller coaster ride of trying to average it out more, fill the troughs more, trim the tops off a bit. And I think with our projects, the same thing, I think is good for, and that's why thinking longer term is good. Thank you.
I think too, as we build programs out, right? John's talked about doing assessments on different facilities, getting those long-term plans helps us build programs that can get us to be more proactive than currently we're very reactive.
Right.
And being reactive costs you a whole lot more money. And so getting better at planning for that long term. So as you develop your programs, like for pipeline replacement, and John's presentation includes some of that, is if you're proactive and you're replacing before you have catastrophic failures, you're going to be able to do it over time. And yes, you don't see the roller coaster of the peaks. You see more of that even. We're spending a certain amount each year as we engage in those programs. But everything has to come together to line us up to be able to do that. And so that's the plan here as we move forward, is figuring all of those details out and bringing it to the board and the public for understanding on where we're going in the longer term.
And I think that longer-term planning lines up with one of the recommendations from the grand jury report that says, 5 years is not enough. You have to plan for 10 years or longer, which is easy to say but hard to do because you're trying to project what's the need and what's the cost with a lot of unknowns, as you pointed out. But we do have to take a longer-term perspective, and like Director Day said, I believe we have to do everything we can to shave off some of those peaks and valleys and get the district on a more even footing. One of the things that I didn't see in this year's CIP was deferred project. I know you mentioned them, but you didn't quantify them. And in prior CIPs, we've said, okay, here's the priority ones, here's the priority twos, here's the ones that we deferred. And as I recall, it was to the tune of about $70 million. I'd like to see us quantify that so we can communicate it to our constituents and we don't approve everything that comes before us. There are these unmet needs that aren't even coming to the board because they're deferred, and we need to be able to quantify that as best we can and communicate that to the general public.
If I might, not to be piling on as a harbinger of doom, I'm just on the county website right now, and the population of this county peaked in 2021, and it's gone down, even though it's counterintuitive of you see building going on, but we've declined 3.4% since 2021 based on 2024 data, and looking at the age demographic, we are an aging population compared to the rest of the state, which we don't know what's going to happen in the future, whether there's going to be more, migration into the county, but that, impacts our ability to fund projects when you have a population base that more resembles the Rust Belt than the rest of growing California. So we have big challenges.
A lot of good points. Just to close this slide out again, I wanted to emphasize, so again, that darker blue is not necessarily our wants. This is matching up with the funds that finance, as we've worked with their staff, have budgeted for us that are likely available. So again, those costs are not captured. Getting more into the list of deferrals, again, we're moving away. We're trying to move away from just kind of spitballing on the wall, which I feel a lot of those deferrals have been in the past, and minimizing the effort of spinning up projects because one operator doesn't like a certain pump or other personal preferences and these nice to haves that have been deferred. We want to get much more programmatic, which we have not had time to do this year. So moving forward, we absolutely intend to come with that gap of what the program, what we'd like to see in the program, and then what we're actually funding in the program, and that'll help to supplement this graphically moving forward. Speaking of, again, we have not quantified our deferrals this year because we've been reworking this CIP process to make it more transparent, more what we feel equal across, or putting more of an emphasis on prioritization of projects as we move forward, and then also trying to get more transparency between engineering and operations staff so that we have the same priorities moving forward. That being said, we currently do not have any pump station or lift station projects that are under construction this year. We've got, I believe, about 50 of each of those on each side of the house, so we should be doing major work on each year, and just those two alone. I previously alluded to the AWA standards of waterline replacements that we're quite a ways away from. And we'll go into some of those as well. The last is, again, somewhat of a nice to have, but the headquarters corporation yard, we operate all of our water operations out of the upper yard, and the facility, although this building might have been overbuilt for the time, the follow-up, the corporation yard was never built. So we have outgrown and are in desperate need for improving our facilities in our upper corporation yard, and that has continued to be deferred as well. Again, how does that impact? So each of these projects, I feel, has been increased in, likely we've seen some increased costs because they have been deferred to the point that they are. The first, the Marina Village Force Main, about this time last year, again, we had a break that actually reached right up to Folsom Lake. That same segment has experienced 4 failures. So although we are in the process of designing and moving forward with that replacement, ideally we would have replaced this with that first or second failure and eliminated some of those emergency projects to reestablish service in that area. The Reservoir 1 floating cover, again, I think our staff has done an amazing job of coordinating this, and I think we've made the best we could, but we always run the risk of having highly inflated costs when we do these emergency replacement projects on a very constrained time schedule. That carries on to our Reservoir 1 backwash waste pumps and our filter valve replacements. Again, these were both identified in our water treatment plant assessments. And as we've got into those, these facilities are failing and an immediate need for replacement. So we'll see some of those projects coming out. And then last, again, we saw the Bridlewood tank and the increased cost, and hopefully, optimally, we potentially would have built a second tank at that site, but our options are limited with the funding that we have available. Getting to just the last couple details. So some more samples of deferred projects, our service line replacements. In 2026, we are budgeting $2.85 million for service line replacements, and that is expected to only cover service lines that fail. So we are not proactively replacing any service lines. That is just, as they fail, our customers are reporting leaks. This is just funding to go out there and reestablish those service lines. And then likewise, on the next slide, our water line replacements. Again, we have two projects in design for next year. Both of those are associated with county or state or Caltrans state relocations, where we are required to go in and remove and relocate our facilities. We are not proactively replacing any pipelines next year in the current CIP. So with that said, our next step is, again, to continue to receive board and public input following this workshop, and incorporate any of that input to a package coming back to the board at the next board meeting on November 10th for CIP adoption. That adopted plan will then roll into the operating budget and financial plan workshop, which will also be presented during the November 10th meeting. Final public comment from that workshop will then be rolled into the final adoption of our operating budget and financial plan at the December 8th board meeting. Because this is a workshop, there is no board action to be taken, and with that, I will open it up for any additional questions or comments.
Can I add 2 points really quickly? During John's presentation, he mentioned staff working on the drinking water side with the Department of Health Services. That is an old reference. They are currently the California Department of Public Health. It's actually the Division of Drinking Water. So just for clarity.
I'm trying to join your group where I'm dating myself, so.
But now the Division of Drinking Water is in the state board. So, yeah, I noted that. Go. Homeland Security? Oh, wait.
Sorry, I revert to old habits. It was
Yeah.
DHS.
No, it is
for
old
years and
habits.
years when I started.
Any
my career.
other board comments on this workshop?
Just one comment. We talked a lot about the CIP and the demands of services and how our residential impact has gone down. However, when you looked at the big chart from 2008, the question I had right off the bat was, how many ratepayers or how many hookups or service lines do we have versus how many we have now 25 years later? So that was one of the unanswered questions that I had, and you might want to think about that, because that makes a big difference on the demand of our use of our facilities. And, I mean, we may be talking about the money feature and how much the emergency, but the key issue is safety. And as more and more ratepayers are added, I mean, we're not growing, obviously. However, our service lines have certainly gone up in the connections. So I just, throw it at me in an email that might answer a question on how many residential lines were we servicing 2008 versus, and commercial. I'd like that thrown in there. And how many we currently have. That might help.
Yes, Director Day.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Paul's comment that, and it's going to be a challenge for all of us, is as he talked about, that the State Economic Development Board projects El Dorado County to continue to contract, even though we see these new homes down Blackstone and such. And then the aging issue, and sadly, an affordability issue for young families now is it's even hard to buy a home here. That used to be one of our big, selling points, hey, this is a more affordable place. Well, it's not as affordable as it used to be. Anyhow, it is going to be a problem of how do we maintain and try maintain, let alone try to catch up on our infrastructure. In 2000s, they thought they would grow their way out of it all, and we know that didn't work, and it's not likely to work for us. So we'll probably have to talk about it more when we talk about our budgets and such. But I just wanted to reiterate that it's a big concern.
And thanks, John, and your staff putting this together. We're being forthright in what reality is. And, it comes down to it's gonna cost more money. And we have we've gone over and over, this is one of the most complex and oldest systems in the state. And just keeping up with it is gonna cost more money. And in some respects, we're paying for the sins of omission of the past. But I also think it's important to convey to the public the gist of the discussions we had here. That to make sure that, most people, they turn on the tap and they expect great water to come out because that's what our staff works to provide. But they don't realize how they're juggling and, working to make this happen. And our communities deserve to hear what we've discussed here today. And I think it's a tough conversation. We just need to keep having it and to work towards solutions. So thank you.
Yeah, I hate to keep, but you guys keep saying things that are good. I think conveying the gist of what we're talking about here, and probably wait, till after we discuss the budget and all that sort of stuff. But the issues that we're dealing with, trying to convey that to the public and to our constituents, to the ratepayers, the financial issues with a potentially contracting population, aging population, yet the need for all these old things to be fixed and replaced. I think maybe conveying that through some of our social media and the newsletter, it's not an upbeat article, but it's dealing with reality. I think it might be good. And kind of like, Lori, what was the one you were talking about? I'm sorry, I'm blanking out, but I'll think of it.
constituency?
Well, no, of conveying not necessarily good news to people, but being honest with people.
Being transparent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and making the case that deferring maintenance and keeping rates low, it's not a fiscally conservative position, because that will return to cost you more money.
Exactly.
Making incremental change to where we are ahead of the maintenance, replacing service lines before they fail, in the long term, that's the cheaper way to proceed.
Well, you can also look at it, it's like, well, we could continue to debate this one, but it's always like the Golden Gate Bridge. You start, and I use this over and over, you start one year painting it, by the second year it's through, and then you have to start all over again. And, you know, a lot of people, and I just had this dialogue with a young man who's working on my, sorry about the saw noise. I'm having a new floor put in my kitchen because of a flood, a leak that caused damage. However, he's been a longtime resident. He's grown up here. And he asked me about water issues because he's now owns a commercial lot and has tenants. So as I was explaining to him about our water system and how you look at your hookups, he goes, well, I do leak detection all the time. Then I said, do you know where that water is coming from? He goes, yeah, it comes up from, I started highlighting the different things, and he says, I did not know any of this. So it's even the education of the people who have born and raised here, who've lived, and they have small businesses like he does, that need to have that understanding, that knowing what needs are met for his own pocketbook, because his water bill for his commercial area was $800 for 2 months, which he said was a shock. He now understands it more and what he can do about it and who he can contact. So, you know, I find more and more people who have been here a long time who do not understand the complexities. And I know we all do, all of us who are familiar with it, but just a basic person who turns on their water faucet, and if it's not coming out, they get a little pissy. So, sorry to say it that way, but they want to understand more. And I, you know, transparency has to be we're getting there. And I love it, because the more education people have about their water bill, the more important that they understand how it got there. So.
Thank you. Any other board comments? I'll make a suggestion. On the chart that next to the last one where you had the next steps, receive the public input, the board input, then next meeting, we're going to adopt the CIP, or at least attempt to, and then on the December 8th meeting, we're going to approve the operating budget in our financial plan. I'd say there's another step that comes after that. In 2026, we're going to implement a new cost of service study, which will impact all the decisions we make in now and in November and December are going to have a significant impact on that cost of service study. So I'd like to put that on there just for full transparency. That's part of the next step. Okay. No other board comments. Is there any public comment on this issue on the workshop?
If members of the public would like to address the board on workshop item number 12, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda on page 2. It appears, President Dwyer, it appears there are no members of the public wishing to speak on workshop item number 12. It is a workshop item, so there is no action.
I'd just like to thank you, John, and staff for, and General Manager Pravani, taking the work to put this together. It's a challenging issue, and we'll just all do the best we can on behalf of the district and our ratepayers. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Are there any assignments, Jennifer?
There's quite a few direction to staff, but nothing that we're bringing back, even with Director Anzini's item. She just wanted a note to the board about the services from 2008 to current.
The number, yeah.
Okay, having no further business, meeting adjourned at 11 something or other.
11:16.